Hi, it's Christine Madera from modernmystic.net and Conversations from the Edge of Consciousness podcast. And today we are talking about which you do you listen to? So we all have, we have this unified you, right? We've got a body, we've got a personality, we have expressions, but we have aspects of ourselves that are kind of in conflict with one another quite a bit of the time. So one way that this has really become clear to talk about is I recently read Jill Bolte Taylor's book, Whole Brain Living, and she's the neuroscientist who had a stroke and wrote My Stroke of Genius. And she talks about 4 aspects of the brain and how those parts of the brain interpret and express themselves. So one being that more the 2 thinking brains, one being the kind of the logical linear brain, the other being that global connected brain that doesn't feel separated from anything, and then 2 emotional brains. So one being the fight, fear brain that's really focused on safety, and then the other aspect of that, the more global emotional brain that was really focused on fun and enjoyment and risk taking and that kind of thing. Now, these 4 parts of our brain, which also are 4 kind of parts of our personality, have legitimately their own perspective and point of view. And these perspectives and point of view don't always agree with each other. So it makes it kind of, a no-brainer why we are sometimes in this kind of inner conflict where part of us is scared of doing something and another part of us just wants to jump in and take a risk. And one part of us is trying to plot and plan and make everything, perfect just before we go forward. And another part of us is like, well, we're just going to trust and move forward. So learning how to navigate these aspects of yourself and move forward in a unified way is the point of that book, Whole Brain Living, and I highly recommend that book. But also just the idea and the approach to your life of being self-aware and of truly beginning to listen to these different aspects of you and understanding which of these aspects of you is in charge of which part of your life and which kind of decisions that you're making. Because you really don't want your fear-based self to be making decisions for the forward growth of your career or your business, because it's always going to have you opting for the safe route and opting to not make changes. And you don't really want that linear part of you to be in charge of taking a leap of faith, because that's not its skill set. And so it will always try to overplan, to control, to do those kinds of things. You don't really want your risk-taking self to be the one that's making your decisions about doing things that actually do imperil your health or your well-being or, your physical safety, because it may not have your true best interests at heart. It has that, carefreeness to it, but really it can put you in some pretty dangerous situations. So, you don't necessarily want that part of you to make those decisions. So learning how to listen to all of these parts of yourself, and each part of these aspects of you is authentic to you. So it's not like there's one that's more authentic to you. And I know on my podcast, I talk sometimes with people and we really talk about that area of connection, of oneness as being your most authentic aspect of self. It's really your deepest aspect of self. And it's highly authentic from the sense that that's coming from your non-physical, energetic, global aspect of self. But it is not the only authentic expression of you. So we can authentically feel fear. We can authentically want to take risks and be in fun and spontaneity. We can authentically really want to plan and move forward. But it's really about looking at which of these is the best suited for the decision that we're making in that particular moment. Now, I tend to be somebody who has defaulted to either my connected part of myself, that global thinking brain, or to that fear-based brain. And then the other 2, I've got a real linear strength as well, but my other one, my risk-taking, fun, spontaneous self, it has really not had a lot of voice. So I'm really spending more time these days allowing that to have more of a voice. I don't always follow that voice, but I allow it to have more of a voice than I had in the past. And I'm recognizing where I'm allowing which part of myself to begin to make decisions in my life, and how I can cultivate then all of these other parts of me to move forward in those decisions. So we all have multiple legitimate, authentic expressions of ourself. Now, in this book, Whole Brain Living, she talks about it in terms of a brain perspective, which isn't the only perspective, but she talks about it in terms of brain perspective. And other people talk about it in terms of like the emotional part of us, the mental part of us, and, the spiritual part of us. So there's, however you divide the pie, we all recognize that we have competing interests within us that are trying to get us to do different things, the good angel, the bad angel, all of that kind of stuff. So it's not so much about choosing one and always going with that one, because that really shuts down your larger intelligence. It's about learning about yourself, becoming aware of who you are and how you are expressing yourself, and which parts of yourself you're listening to make your best decisions. So you can look back and see, where have you allowed maybe your spontaneous risk-taking self to make a decision in a relationship, or that impacted a relationship that might have not been that great, right? Or where you tried to get your linear self to plan what should be a spontaneous and fun event, which probably didn't work out that well. Or where you have allowed that fear-based self to hijack, a real dream that you had, that because, that part of yourself is not the self that's best suited to expanding and moving into something new and exciting, but it is something you need to listen to, so you know where your fears are, where you might be blocking yourself. And you might notice where you've had that large global connected self maybe being a little too detached to a situation, where perhaps we would have been better served by being a little bit more, connected in the physical sense. So these are just some common ways that these various selves can become a little problematic. But if you begin to look at where and how do you want to feel more connected with yourself, with others, with the world, with goodness generally, that global aspect of self, perfect for that. So when you want to really create a plan, if you've got an inspiration to move forward in something and you need a step-by-step plan, that linear thinking mind, that's its specialty. When you are trying to investigate something that has stopped you in the past, if you have an old pattern that keeps coming up, having a conversation with that part of you that's fear-based, that's where that pattern lies and lives, and really inviting that voice forward to understand how that pattern has come into play, about what the fears are behind it, and being able to empower that aspect of you, perhaps with its connections with the global brain, the linear brain, or the fun risk-taking brain, can help support it in making decisions that are more in line with the direction you want to go. And then that part of you that is the risk taker, where does that really helps you to step out of your comfort zone and do it from a place of excitement rather than fear. So when all these aspects of you are talking to themselves, and if those aspects don't make sense to you, then when your mental and emotional are talking, or your mental, emotional, and spiritual talking, or however that works for you, are conversing together, and you're listening to all of these parts, and then you're making that choice from that deeper sense of your deepest truth, that deeper sense of consciousness. That's where you're going to begin to know yourself best and move forward in a way that really has your highest and best interest at heart, instead of the agendas of smaller parts of ourselves. All right, so which self do you listen to? And how can you listen to all parts of yourself before you move forward and make a decision that's really important for you? So that's my challenge to you, and to spend some time doing that. When you're making a decision, pause, listen to these various aspects of yourself, what everybody has to say. Don't choose one to step forward with, but let them all speak, and find that deeper sense of truth and really call on that, which often will have an element of all of these as you move forward, and really move forward as that unified sense of you. All right, have a beautiful day, and I will see you another time.